Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Deborah Tyler, and I'm the Associate Executive Director at NAESP, the National Association of Elementary School Principals, and we're very pleased that you're joining us this afternoon for a great webinar. The topic of this webinar is Future Ready Schools, Leaders Preparing Students for Success. You'll see on the slide that you can find today's presentation on our website, and also this webinar will be recorded, and you can also access the recording on our website within the next 24 hours. Also today we have a hashtag, Thank a Principal, in honor of National Principals Month. I'm also very pleased to introduce three great presenters we have today. We have Tom Murray, the Director of Innovation with Future Ready Schools and the Alliance for Excellent Education. We also have Brad Gustafson, Elementary School Principal at Greenwood Elementary and Wayzata Public Schools in Minnesota. And also joining us is Jared Vance, Middle School Principal at Kickemuit Middle School in Bristol Warren School District in Rhode Island. So we're very pleased to hear from these three gentlemen today. And so I'm going to turn it over to Tom now.
Hi everybody, Tom Murray, and it is a pleasure to be with you all. First, I actually just want to start with a true thank a principal. So for all those principals that are out there watching the webinar, or those that are watching recording, thank you so much for the work that you do. Thanks for loving and caring about kids, and thanks for taking the time to join and invest in today. You know, in starting off this, let's start with this compelling why. We are seeing disruptive innovation truly in every single sector. When you take a look, for instance, this industry, remember those things on the left, those taxi cabs? Being somebody that flies virtually every week and travels every week, you know, I don't think I've taken one of those in a couple of years. Why? When we look at this space, this industry, things like Uber have been completely disrupting the space. It has completely taken an industry that hadn't changed for decades, and it's completely disrupted it. And we all know that. We can take a look at other examples. This right here is just an example that's already disrupting the space of the disruptors. You see, this is a self-driving car that's already disrupting Uber in Japan. I believe they unleashed about 10,000 of them, and it works the exact same way, except that nobody's in the car. So you use your app, you pull up your app on your phone, and the car now shows up. Now, I know traveling, I'm not going in that car quite yet, but it is already disrupting the disruptors in that space. We think about this industry, the hotel industry. We think about our Marriotts and our Hiltons, and for decades, didn't change a whole lot. We think back to maybe 10, 15 years ago, and the internet created competition, and places like TripAdvisor created real competition. We think now, Airbnb. And I'm not sure if you've stayed at an Airbnb. First time I heard about an Airbnb, a friend was telling me about sleeping on a couch in France, and we think about how that has completely disrupted that industry and that space. But what about us? What about our sector, our industry? And you know, I hate to call it as such, but let's think about education. What is the disruption in our space? So I created this image. I Googled, and I went to Google Images, classrooms in 1916, classrooms in 2016. And it's fascinating what you'll see. I used an app and I merged the two of those together, and to challenge and think about ourselves is in our industry, in our sector, take the last 100 years. How much has really changed? I've had the opportunity through our work at Future Ready Schools, which we'll be talking about in a little bit, to work with truly thousands of school leaders over the past few years, visit dozens and dozens of schools, and here's what I can tell you. We are seeing incredible innovation in our schools in pockets. How do we scale it? How do we envision a place in a time when we walk in and it's not always just the teacher-centric environment with a teacher standing up front and desks in rows and students facing forward and just listening the majority of the time? The good news is we are seeing schools that are changing that, and the schools that you're leading are really leading that cusp. And as we look nationwide and see some of the work, we're seeing incredible work going on in that transformation. Take a look at this graphic here. I'm not sure if you've all seen the Gallup student engagement survey that came out a number of months ago. If you're taking a look here, this was the results from 2015. The N number, as you can see up top, is about over 928,000 children. Let me break this graph down for you. Here's what it shows you. When you look at the left, in 5th grade of those surveyed, and this is students across the country in urban and rural and all different grade levels, they reported that about 75%, about 3 out of every 4 kids, seems to be engaged in their classes. This is kids reporting. But watch what happens. It goes down in 6th grade, down in 7th grade, down in 8th grade, down in 9th grade, down in 10th grade, down in 11th grade, where it bottoms out in 11th grade that's saying less than 1 in 3 of our nation's kids are saying that they're feeling engaged in their classes, and it ticks up a little bit senior year. And I personally attribute that to whether it's the senior prom or the, oh shoot, I've got to graduate and I've got to get engaged here. You see that tiny little uptick. What's fascinating and what's sad, if you look at that, the longer students are with us, the less engaged they become. It puts the challenge on us of what are we doing in terms of learning and how do we make it so that our students really are engaged and want to have these incredible learning experiences, and how do we provide those for us? Taking a look further at that survey, when you look at the blue line, that's showing in the last 7 days I've learned something interesting in school. Take a look at those numbers. The green, I have fun in school. By the time they hit high school, less than 1 in 5 of our high schoolers are indicating they're having any fun in school. And then the red line, at this school I get to do what I do best every day. We think about our personal interests, our personal passions. We take a look at those things. How many of us would want to work in those environments if we were those students? One of the challenges I have for you as building principals or school administrators, if your state law didn't require it, would your students show up? And if not, why? If so, why? What brings it to us to that point? We've created Future Ready Schools, and I want to share a little bit of information on it for those of you that may not know. Lots of information at futureready.org, our homepage. We really want to help solve this issue. I want to remind everybody as well, make sure to use the Thank a Principal. I see some tweets going out there live. I encourage you to take that on social media and join the conversation there as well. The start of Future Ready actually came out of the ConnectEd initiative. And if you go to whitehouse.gov/ConnectEd, remember this is the President's plan for things like 99 and 5 to get schools high-quality broadband and high-speed connectivity. The U.S. Department of Education, and specifically the Office of Ed Tech, really worked diligently as well to say, you know, it's not just about getting the stuff in schools. It's not just about buying more stuff, putting it out there, and hoping it makes a difference. This is about leadership. This is about how do we change school culture. And for those of us that are participants and those of us taking a look, that is us. That falls on our shoulder as school leaders. So it grew out of the ConnectEd initiative. It became a partnership with the U.S. Department of Education and the Alliance for Excellent Education. That's my home organization, all4, the number 4ed.org. I encourage you to check that out. One of the top known policy-related groups in D.C. And taking a look, that partnership formed along with a tremendous partnership to support the work that you're doing as school leaders. When you take a look, groups like NASP and NASSP or ISTE or COSIN, and you can see those are just some of the over 60 coalition partners that we now have working together to support you and to support your work so that we can help transform these learning experiences and really create personalized learning opportunities for kids. So the U.S. Department of Education created the Future Ready District Pledge. And when you take a look at that, sometimes, and this is really superintendent focused, superintendents can look at this and think, you know, we've been doing these numbers of things for a decade now, and others are just getting their toes dipped into the water. Things such as leading a culture of digital learning or helping families transition to high-speed connectivity, dynamic professional learning opportunities, or access to high-quality devices and digital content. Reach higher, that's your college and career readiness piece. And then helping districts, breaking down silos to help and mentor each other so that we can work together for kids. The President himself actually kicked off Future Ready Schools back in November of 2014, where 100 innovative superintendents came to take that pledge and take a stand to say, we believe in transitioning these learning experiences for kids. We can do this together. To date, and this is actually updated as of today, over 2,800 superintendents have signed the Future Ready Pledge nationwide, which is over 18 million students. Just a huge impact on districts saying we really want to do this work together. We've also had a variety of states start to sign on, and what that means is different in each state. If you're in a state where you're seeing that you're color-coded here, sometimes state departments have said, hey, we're going to work with this statewide. We're going to use some of the framework and the tools and the resources. Sometimes it's a variety of organizations working together. For instance, out here in California, we have CUE and AXA and TCAL and SETPA and a variety of organizations working together to say, how do we provide better learning opportunities for the kids that we serve and do so together? So as you can see, this national initiative has really been supported to support your work. And I want to hit a couple key pieces, but before I turn it over to some principals to be able to share their story and the work that they're doing. The foundation of Future Ready comes down to the Future Ready framework. And if you take a look, all the different areas that you're seeing here, these are, number one, they're research-based. There's a lot of great things going on there in education. There's a lot of great opinions that are out there. But what does the research actually say? What actually works when we're talking about this stuff? You can see some of the different areas. You can see student learning being at the heart and the soul of that. What you'll notice from a principal end or a district leadership end is the leadership encompasses all of it. Because here's what we're seeing nationwide. You can be in a school district that's got all the stuff, lots of great stuff, and not doing a whole bunch of innovative stuff at all. And you can be in a district that has very little, that's doing incredible things for kids. And that key, and one of those key differences, is school leadership. That's you. Let's hit a couple of these real quick. First one that you see there, the blue one, that's our curriculum instruction and assessment. As districts take a look at the Future Ready framework, how are they visioning? What is their vision for teaching and learning? What do they want the classroom to look like 3, 4, 5 years down the road? How are they making sure that their curriculum is matching that? How are they infusing technology as part of that to create truly authentic learning opportunities for kids? When we look here, this is our personalized professional learning. When we take a look, normally the one-size-fits-all, sit and get, hours-based accountability to typically called professional development, when you look at the research, it doesn't show any impact. So how do we transition to support teachers and empower teachers to make learning more personal? We're going to talk about redesigning the learning experience for kids. We've got to talk about redesigning the learning experience for adults as learners as well, and that's to be one that's more personal in nature. Our next gear we take a look at, that's our budget and resources. That's the sustainability of this all. When we see nationwide, we see districts taking out 30-year bonds to buy devices that will only be around for 3 or 4 years. Quite frankly, that's just negligence. We can't make that sustainable. So how are we making sure that the decisions we make today are sustainable for the future and not just layering technology on everything that we've always done? The next piece, that's our community partnerships. How do we truly collaborate with the community? How are we engaging businesses? How are we engaging higher education? In an era where everything is in the palm of our hand mobily, how are we engaging in real-time applications to connect with parents, to connect with community members, or even those family members that may not have kids in our schools? How are we doing that? The notion of a school brand and branding and our vision and our message, what does that look like? And how are we communicating that in 2016 when the few times a month, or the once-a-month report cards, or few times a year, once a month newsletter, a few times a year report cards. In 2016, we've got to be able to do more than that to stay relevant in the eyes in this mobile generation. When we take a look next, that's our data and privacy gear. You know, as we move things digital and things become on, last year in 2015, 47 states, 47 of our 50 states either had new student data privacy law introduced or passed last year. Additional going on in 2016 this year as well. So when we take a look, where's privacy on your radar? States like New York and states like California have put it on the radar of district leaders. In some states, when we take a look, some districts aren't having a whole lot of conversation about it. When we look at things like privacy, it takes one person mistake to make us national news, and all the great stuff we're doing completely can be stepped on by one mistake. And so student data privacy is part of that as well. The other piece of that's also data literacy. The red gear, when we take a look at this area, this bucket, that's the robust infrastructure. How do we ensure ubiquitous connectivity so that our learning opportunities that we're looking for can happen? We've seen time and time again, and I'm sure we've all experienced that poor Wi-Fi. Well, we can't talk about leveraging technology. We can't talk about personalized learning or a blended learning approach for kids if we're giving poor connectivity to our teachers. Or if the devices take 12 minutes to boot up, we can't expect them to use these before they actually get in the way of learning. Our next one, taking a look, that's our use of space and time. If we're going to shift the pedagogy, we've got to shift the spaces that the learning takes in as well. What does the research say on the learning? As well as the use of time. And that's really getting at the anytime, anywhere learning and what that actually looks like. And how can we do that? Districts across the country are really using not just this framework, but using all of these different tools and resources to truly create incredible opportunities for kids. I'm fortunate today to be joined by 2 leaders. They're going to share their story, their future-ready story, their journey, and things that they're doing in their schools. Because as leaders, it's up to you to create this culture of innovation. Having been in so many districts across the country, what's fascinating is, yes, district-level leadership makes a difference here. Yes, district-level leadership helps point that vision. But in the exact same district, in 2 different buildings, you can get 2 very different leadership styles with 2 very different school cultures, leading to very different opportunities for both teachers and students. And that's you. That's on your shoulders as principals. You are truly the key to where the rubber hits the road here. And we're going to talk to two leaders today, and they're going to share their stories about creating a culture of innovation. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Jared Vance. Jared, as was introduced, is a middle school principal, a dynamic leader from Rhode Island. So Jared, I'm going to turn it over to you, and I'm also going to remind our viewers, join us online at Thank a Principal right now as well to join the conversation there. Jared, tell us your story.
Thank you, Tom. I appreciate it. I apologize ahead of time. I got a little bit of a cold, so I'm a little bit raspy right now. But so a brief background about me. I've been in administration for about 5 years now. My second year as a principal here at Kickemuit Middle School in Rhode Island. During that time, I did some Fuse Fellowship work through the Highlander Institute, trying to implement blended learning into the public schools in the state of Rhode Island. It's a fantastic, game-changing initiative statewide in Rhode Island. So to start with, Bristol Warren Regional School District, we're a blending of two towns, Bristol and Warren. We are a suburban school right outside of Providence. If you want to click to the next slide there, Tom. So recently what we've done with the work that we've done in our schools around creating a STEM pathway, K through 12, and the work that we've done around assessment literacy, and then the Future Ready initiative and how we've tried to implement that structure in our district. We've been invited to join the League of Innovative Schools. You know, we're one of 87 schools in the nation, so it's a pretty prestigious group. We're very excited about the opportunities that are going to be there with that group of schools as well. So at the district level in Bristol Warren, we've really embraced the Future Ready initiative. In our minds, it really creates a robust structure for institutional change towards a digitally rich learning environment for our students. We've been working towards a purposeful use of technology, with the vision being providing students with personalized learning environments that promote deeper, authentic learning experiences. Future Ready creates pathways that address all areas of an institution, and that's one of the things that we find so rich about this initiative and this change. Is it's not just about the technology in the classrooms. It's not just about a device. It's about looking at all the structures that support our system, your curriculum and instruction, your budget cycle, data and privacy, how do you engage the community, your resources, the professional learning. It's such a wide array of things that come into play so that we can have the best opportunities provided to our students every day. So what we've done at Bristol Warren at a district level is we've looked at each of the gears, and we've created a district-wide steering committee for implementation. You know, and so that steering committee oversees the work of subcommittees, which are gear-based. I happen to be the chair of our community partnerships subcommittee. So I'm charged with trying to build relationships with our community stakeholders, our local businesses, trying to build stronger relationships with families, have them be aware of what's happening in the schools so they can be supportive. We're also trying to, hold events where families, communities, businesses come into school and witness the great things that are happening, so that they can support it on their side as well. So to bring it down to, if you want to go down 2 slides, Tom, right there. If you want to bring it down into Kickemuit, go one up. So we've done a lot of work trying to bring a dynamic, innovative environment to our students. So this is just a brief overview of some of the pieces that we've done. Our DLTs, they're called digital learning teams. These are small cohorts of teachers that have embraced the use of technology for their instruction. And what they're charged to do is find an app, find a strategy, find an approach, implement it in a short cycle action research process where they're reviewing, is it effective, is it working? If it's not, and we tell these teachers, the staff, fail, but fail quickly so that we can move on to the next and find something that is effective. One of the things that we do in education is we hold on to strategies and approaches that may not be effective, or we hold on to them past their effective date, and we don't make that change. So our DLT is really looking at that fast cycle action research to implement a strategy or an approach. If it's working, great, continue to run with it. If it's not, change it, move on to something else. We've done a lot of work with personalized PD, creating summits. We have a badging, we're looking at a badging system. We use Twitter as a huge communication tool, for the community, for the local businesses, but also for mom and dad at home. There's rare few other apps out there where you can see what's happening in your child's environment during the school day as quickly as Twitter, especially if it's used well. Some of the things that we're doing for the community are around like Happy Hour, which was a PTO event, our Tech Night student demo. We did a scavenger hunt with QR codes. Check us out. It's a parent night that we're having coming up, and then school bus tours where we're actually taking community businesses around to our schools to witness what we're doing. You want to go on to the next slide, Tom? So I'm gonna talk about really a little more in depth, kind of the 3 gears that have been the main focus at Kickemuit this past couple of years. The first one is the community partnerships. For us, having the support of mom and dad at home and having the support of the community makes it that much more, makes it that much easier to continue to provide resources for the schools. So when people in the community see the impact of these approaches, see the impact of these strategies that we're using, it's hard to say, like when the budgetary cycle comes around, technology, that's not meaningful anymore. Because now they see a child's face and they see how engaged they are and how hard they work, and in the end, what the achievement is and how well these kids do. So it makes it really hard for the, at that time for people to say, we're going to cut that line item. But at the same time, we're also sharing out to mom and dad so they know what their kids are experiencing and seeing the impact of this. Tom was talking about disruptive innovation. This is such a different environment than what we were in school with, what our students' parents in the schools that they went into. So when kids come home and they talk about what's happening and mom and dad can't really wrap their head around it, these things that we're implementing, like the parent tech night, it was a student demo. So when they're able to witness those things, then they can have an idea, right, of what's happening. So our parent tech night was a demo. We ran some sessions for families so they understood how to use some of the apps and strategies, but then at the same time, we had students modeling and using the technology for them during the presentation. So it was a demonstration. We had kids that were creating games through Sploder and using gamification to access content. We used Twitter. We talked about Erasmus. We did exposed families to a lot of different things. It was hugely, hugely impactful. And with that, we're kind of building on it to our next Check Us Out event. And then this past month, our scavenger hunt, where we used QR codes and an app called Flipgrid to be able to introduce the faculty to the community and have them, find interesting facts through those videos. It was a huge success. We've had a massive outpouring at our open houses, and largely based on these more innovative and dynamic approaches to it. So what we've also done is we've really tried to personalize the professional development for staff. I love to tweet out about teachers teaching teachers. There's nothing more powerful than learning from a colleague, learning from somebody in your content area, in your building. Typically what happens is people go to conferences and they're like, this is great, but it doesn't apply to what happens in my room. This is a fantastic approach, but it's not perfect for my building. So having people that are in your building train other staff members, so teachers teaching teachers, makes it that much more powerful. They're more willing and open to listen to their colleague. So what we did, we called it a KMS Tech Summit last November, where we ran a professional development day like a tech summit, where our presenters, our staff, had to create session descriptions, staff had to sign up, they were given multiple options, so they had choice, they had a variety of things to choose from, so it wasn't somebody saying you need to go to this. It fostered better buy-in, it fostered more engagement, it created an environment where we were learning from each other and the dialogue was fantastic. And the biggest piece that we really focused on was walking away with a tangible strategy, a tangible approach, something that they could take from that session and put right into their classroom immediately the next day. So it wasn't, okay, now you're off on your way, hopefully this will work out. It was, okay, here's how we're using an app, this is how we're using the strategy. Now we're going to sit down and create, and we're going to use that in your lesson. We're going to use that as an approach in your room. You're going to try a new grouping pattern because of what we talked about. Immediately we saw change. We saw teachers that may have been a little resistant to the use of technology diving right in the next day. It was fantastic. One of the other things that we've been working at is badging. So, or some people like to call it micro-credentialing. So having staff be able to earn badges because they've completed a number of independent professional development opportunities, and then they had to present their findings, their research, their approach, their strategy, and then they earned a badge for that. And what that does, again, that builds in internal and intrinsic motivation. I want this because it's going to help me out, and then they get that badge as validation of the efforts. Again, that's something that we're starting to trial this year, and so we'll know the impact as we move forward. So one of the other things that we really have tried to focus on is the use of space and time. So we've been trying to make classrooms more dynamic, more engaging, more being untethered. Right? So our superintendent talks about flexible workspaces and being untethered. And so we've created classroom settings now where we've invested a good amount of money into creating these flexible workspaces. So now kids can pull a device, work in a small group, come back together, work as a whole class. They can work independently. They can move in their seats and collaborate with their neighbor. But then we're making that much more engaging, and also helps with the use of technology. This year was the first year we've gone one-to-one in 6th grade. So now, as Tom said earlier, anytime, anywhere access. So those students have access to Google Classroom with Chromebooks to be able to access content, to access approaches, their assignments, collaborate, create, connect with the current research, connect with the strongest professionals in the field. So we've really kind of opened that venue up for our students. We're no longer functioning within the 4 walls of our classroom. We are now open to everything globally. Again, it's a game changer. So like I said, we're really trying to change that space and time. So when people walk into our classrooms now, they're dynamic. If you look at some of this furniture, it looks like gumdrops, and kids are sitting on that. We have chairs that they wheel around the room. Our wireless is pretty robust, and every kid has a device, and they're able to create and engage with the content at such a different level than in years past. So it's been fantastic. And some of the other things that we're working on, we're talking about the change of space and time, are our approaches, right? So station rotation, that's pretty typical with how we rotate through the use of devices. But right now we have staff that are dabbling with playlists and flipped classrooms, right? So delivering content at home and then being able to have robust communication and discussion in the classroom, having kids access the lecture style information at their own time at home, and then being able to come in enriched with the info, but then to be able to push their learning even further through discussion and activity. That happens with providing them a device, providing them a medium to access that info, and then utilizing the playlist. That creates that personalized pathway where students are able to have a differentiated approach to accessing content. Do they go through certain activities? Do they access certain resources? The teacher is able to create different ways and different amounts of activities that students can go through to gain the content that would be presented, right? So a student that's a high flyer may have different activities than a student that might be struggling with the content. They might have some more review and different approaches that they access through that playlist. And then in that, we're able to give students back immediate feedback about how they're doing. Are they understanding, with mini assessments along the way to provide that, again, that immediate feedback back to our kids. So like I said, it's fantastic. It's changing what classrooms look like. And a lot of this it goes back to the future-ready work. This framework and this structure is the guiding force around these changes in classrooms. And it has been hugely impactful in Bristol Warren and for myself professionally. So with that, I think I'm going to pass the mic to Brad Gustafson.
Jared, I'm going to jump back in there real quick, just very quickly. And for our listeners, I had the opportunity to visit Jared and his team. And one of the reasons that, in my opinion, things are really humming along there in Bristol Warren, a few things. Number one, we've got incredible vision starting at the top with the superintendent there and Jared's leadership team, an incredible vision of where we're going with all of this. One of the things that we often refer to at Future Ready, if you've ever seen Noster's model, is when the vision is lacking, and we've all experienced this at some point. It's really difficult to get where we're going when we can't see what we're trying to get to, right? And so the vision there in Bristol Waring of the learning opportunities they're trying to create from kids starts at the top, but then is also very, very strong, as you can hear from Jared, at the building level, really where the wheels hit the road there. And so kudos to you. You know, looking at this picture here, Jared, and looking at some of the images that you see there, the change as we change the pedagogy itself, how do we shift those spaces, and it's really encouraging to see those as well. I want to challenge from our admin end, especially our secondary colleagues, just thinking traditionally, when we walk into classrooms and it's teachers standing up front, desks in rows, I call it the cemetery effect, and when we have desks in rows and kids facing forward and teachers are doing the vast amount of the talking, but then out of the other side of our mouth, we're talking how we're creating environments for kids for problem solving and collaboration and the skills they're going to need for their future. Those two things don't match. And so from a question then, does the space of the pedagogy actually match the pedagogy that we're shooting for here? You know, that worked well in an industrial model when everybody was doing the exact same thing at the same point in time. But I think we'd all agree that that cannot be the goal of what we're doing at this point as moving forward. And so, Jared, kudos to you and your team, and I appreciate you sharing your journey and your story there from the leadership up top all the way down to the incredible planning process. And that's the other piece there. I'll share a little bit at the end, some tools and resources. But one of the kudos to Jared and his district there is really systemically planning all of these different areas, as opposed to doing things sometimes on a whim, causing a lot of frustration or poor planning can lead to, obviously, we've all seen a variety of negatives. And so lots of great transformation. Jared, I want to do one follow-up question, if I could, that we did get. Can you expand a little bit on, I believe you called them the Tech Out Days or the Tech Out events, and one of the things I've been most impressed with in your district and getting to know some of the people in district is really the capacity that you're building in people. And I would assume that those types of events are really building capacity in your own teaching colleagues and so on and so forth. Are those regular events? Can you tell us what those look like and how they build the skills and also how you build human capital throughout?
Yep. So they are regular events where they're scheduled multiple times throughout the course of the school year. So like our open house this year would have been one with the scavenger hunt, and then coming up we have a Tech Us Out night. And so what's happening is we have staff in our building that have a higher level of capacity for using technology. And so then we will open up sessions to actually train families. So mom and dad can come in and work through using Flipgrid to give a response, to hear somebody comment on theirs and then build back. So when students come home and they're like, hey mom, I did this today on Flipgrid, it was awesome. We talked about this. We talked about our SMPs in math today, and I responded this way. And parents don't really know what they're talking about. This provides those families an opportunity to actually gain that same experience that the kids do. And so when they have that conversation at the dinner table now, they're talking the same language. It's not, what, explain it to me. It's, oh, I get that. I did that on the Tech Us Out night. So we do those throughout the course of the school year. We did happy hour, which was strictly parents, and then that was myself and Tom Driscoll and a couple of our teachers talking about the use of technology. The Tech Us Out event, which is coming up, I talked about a little bit, and then the Parent Tech Night, which was another one, but it was more of a student demo. So we were pairing the classroom instruction with the students who are there experiencing those approaches and strategies during the day. So they were doing that modeling in front of mom and dad who came in, and then they gained that experience as well. So when we're talking about building capacity, it's not just about staff and it's not just about students, but it's about the community as well, so that people understand and can speak to what's happening and the changes that are happening in our schools.
That's awesome, and thanks for sharing that. So thanks, Jared. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Brad. I'll let Brad Gustafson talk about his story, and congrats to the Minnesota Elementary Principal of the Year, I believe, Brad. So I will turn this over to you and let you tell your story. Brad.
Hey, thanks a lot, Tom. So I serve as an elementary principal with the Wayzata Public Schools. Our school is a K-5 school. Just for context, I have 3 elementary-aged kids at home. I'm an author. I do some blogging and podcasting. And one of my passions, which fits in with what we're talking about here today, is just bringing learning experiences to kids that allow them to be empowered learners. So just innovative learning, whether there's tech involved with that or not. And that's not just for kids at Greenwood. It's not just for kids in my home, my wife and I's kids, but for all kids. I think all kids deserve that. So with regard to kind of that journey, because it is a journey, becoming future ready, when I started at Greenwood in 2010, it was a national blue ribbon school. We had about 600 kiddos. So things were going really well, amazingly talented staff. And at that point, I was learning the ropes, building relationships, and that's a perpetual process. But one thing that we have to continually ask ourselves is, where do we want to go? And there's a well-known story of Wayne Gretzky, who always said, I skate to where the puck is going to be, because that's where my teammates need me. I'm not standing still waiting for the puck. So that's kind of the process we've been involved in. And some of the places we know where our kids need us to be is leading change through visioning and adding programming that really supports 21st century fluencies. And coding is an example of that. And you can see that our staff has been recognized with some different things recently and over the years. And I think even more importantly, our kids have been recognized. So I hope I get this right, but the last couple of years we have a third or a fourth grade team that took first place in the nation in the Continental Math League Computer Programming Challenge. We also had individual honors. So we had the top scoring student the past 2 years. And how does that happen? I think it happens when a community of staff and learners and parents come together to prioritize things that really are about having kids be future ready, whether that's coding during the school day, after school coding clubs that we offer, things like that. So let's bop into the first official slide. That one was unofficial. The three levers that I just want to briefly hit on in the next few minutes are what we have focused on as a team, and there have been other things, but these are three that really come to the top. So how we're allocating the few precious resources that we have, how we're using our space and time, and then building the capacity of the people doing the work in the classrooms through teacher leadership. So let's cruise to the next slide. So just the first thing, because people always ask, and there are some misperceptions and really valid questions that I get asked a lot. Do you need to have a big budget to create innovative learning for kids? Or what if kids are more coming to us with less, or maybe have a propensity to violence? That's a question that I recently fielded, and I've been thinking a lot about it. And I think in some ways, if I were a kid coming to school and it wasn't made for me and meeting my needs, I'd be a little upset about that too. So here's where we've dedicated our resources and energy to make school a place that all kids, if they were driving the bus, that they would want the bus to stop at. And that goes back to what how he started out the program here. So one of the things with leadership, I think modeling is one of the most important things we can do, and it's something that I try to do instead of mandates. We don't mandate that every staff member is on Twitter and sharing and learning. I certainly model that and how that can look and offer support. Another thing is, people ask, how do you pay for that? How do kids have access to drone technology for math challenges and 3D printing and other things? And really the answer is surprisingly simple. We have a line item in our budget for innovation, and that's a protected amount of money where if people come to me and ask for something and it's different and maybe a little risky because it's unproven or we haven't tried it before, I don't have to go and be a barrier or red tape and try to scrounge money or apply for a grant. I can work with them, seek to understand, and really empower the ideas that they want to implement to do better and to do different for kids. And that's been really effective. There's been an iteration of that budget because what I was finding based on feedback and just observation was some staff are very comfortable going to their school leader and just with ideas and talking things through and asking for things, and others aren't. But we have kids in every single room, right? So how do we really open things up in a transparent way? And what we did this past year was we took the line item budget, which we still have, but we made it even more accessible. And at the end of the year, last spring, we did something called a one-sentence grant where I engaged staff and just said, we know the vision. Now, how can I support you in your best practices, creating comfortable learning environments and innovation? So by that, I mean, I don't care if you want a fan to keep your classroom air circulation better, flexible seating, or 3D printers. You tell me what you need to make a difference for kids, and all I need is a sentence. I don't need anything fancy. You just send me an email with horrible grammar, take 10 seconds, and the response was so positive. And we were able to deploy resources in a way like we never have been before. And teachers asked for what they need for it. They asked for really cool things, different things, but the process was so smooth. Feedback has been great. We've also put PD dollars to work. If you need another example of how you can stretch your diminishing budget, and one way we've done that is, so we've done makerspace type PD with staff. And I'm not talking about let's learn how to use makerspaces so we can put them into practice with kids. I'm talking about beginning of the year workshop stuff where teachers are learning and doing some of their welcome back activities using makerspace supplies. So the first year we tried that, we invested in some Legos, and it was teacher-led. There was research articles and some other things happening alongside it. But at the end of that time, we were left with some great supplies that most certainly aren't gathering dust on our shelves. Kids are now using them when we're not using them as learning tools. So it's kind of a value-added thing where teachers were able to use some of this stuff, and so are our kids. Carryover funds is a big one. We target money. We don't spend it frivolously at the end of the year. We're very purposeful to be able to dedicate stuff like our mobile makerspace fleet that we have. That's a product of being intentional and planning ahead, knowing we were going to have carryover dollars instead of quickly trying to spend it for whatever reason at the end of the year. We've also, as a last strategy, done some cross-site sharing of resources. So we have a few mobile makerspaces that we actually share with another site, and by a process of trading these makerspace carts, we spend half the money, and our kids get twice as many opportunities. So space and time. On the first slide, you saw that we started with about 600 kids when I arrived at Greenwood, and at one point we're up to about 868 students, so it felt a little bit like we were really cozy, maybe a herd of sheep, maybe not. But things were certainly full. Our plates were full, and instead of trying to complain about that, we just tried to redefine our plate and our space a little bit. The biggest example of that is a team of teachers and I just problem solving on, we knew we wanted kids to have opportunities to make, to invent, to engineer, but we didn't have any space, literally any space. So we made our makerspace mobile. Now our makerspaces can be checked out like a library book. We have, I want to say 14 or 15 different carts with high-tech, low-tech, no-tech. I mean, we have knitting looms with yarn. We have Play-Doh for creative construction building, all the way up to writable circuitry where kids can literally use free-flowing ink pens to draw circuits that work, and everything in between. We also, Jared alluded to this, but we're trying to envision this school without walls concept. We have hashtag GW Greats where teachers are sharing their innovative practices and their relationship building. We have monitors in the hallway, the front office, where the learning is very visible. So if I go to make copies in the office, all I need to do is glance up and I see a flat screen TV showing every 30 seconds or a minute it's updated our Twitter feed, and I can be kind of in classes virtually. And the same is true for a teacher making a copy or kids walking down the hallway looking at their siblings or classmates on the television with really great learning happening. So I can't tell you, and I'm sure you guys have experienced this too, every principal does. You go into a classroom, you walk out and you think, that was incredible, that was so inspiring, and then you realize no one will ever know about it except me. And Twitter is just one tool where we're able to actually bring parents into that magic so that they can have more informed dinner conversations. We live stream events, whether it's Geography Bee, Character Assembly, and things in between. And we've found, and actually a teacher, teachers always have the smart ideas. Principals sometimes stumble into things through dumb luck, but we were live streaming and a teacher said, can we continue to do this at assemblies because our kids who become dysregulated with assemblies because of the noise, often they have to leave and they miss out. So we started continued live streaming, but we were very purposeful. So now kids who become dysregulated, whether they have autism spectrum disorder or anything else, they can still experience it and participate in a classroom live streaming. And of course their parents can as well. Let's just click to the next slide. I want to get to that third area. So as far as capacity building for just myself as a learner and our team, I've been having conversations with people and talked to George Curls recently, and we're talking about the difference between engagement and empowerment. And I think the goal needs to be learner engagement, but just because, or I'm sorry, I said that wrong. Empowerment is the goal. Traditionally, I think we've shot for engaged kids. The hard part about empowerment, you can empower a teacher, you can empower a student. That doesn't mean they're going to be engaged and owning that, that agency. So part of the system and the culture that a school principal can help create and support is having people really own that empowerment. So you can model that, what it means to make choices in learning. I know a couple years ago we experimented with optional PD, optional professional development, and that was a really powerful thing, and it put the pressure, we put the pressure on our professional development team, and they rose to the challenge, creating staff learning experiences that were so compelling that people wanted to show up even though it was optional. Think about that for a second. There's no cemetery effect going on in those meetings. We listen to our staff, our PD team asks, what do you want to learn about? Where do you need us to be? Kind of that Gretzky thing, skating to the puck, and right now we have a lot of energy around mindfulness. But giving people choices. Sometimes the choices in the past, they've been tiering. So if you want to learn about supporting kiddos with notability, you choose what notability session you want to go to, kind of the novice or the intermediate. Sometimes it's completely topical where their choices are a wide array of things. We've done the EdCamp thing with staff and flipped learning in purposeful ways. It's not something that we do every single meeting, but sometimes meetings and the conversation that we're trying to elicit are enhanced when we give people information before they show up, whether that's an article or a short podcast. And then the last thing, and this is my specialty, is really just messing up and failing. I try lots of things and I'm okay, and I think it's created a little bit of a piece where people understand if I try something new, it's okay to make a mistake, because Brad makes lots of mistakes, and he's cool with that, and we're cool with that. And I think that's what we want. That's the attitude we want our kids to have too. So the last thing I was going to share is creating this culture. If you look at the two train tracks, here's what I've experienced. You have the track on the left, and to me that's traditional best practice, things that we know to be true, timeless truths like relationship building, content mastery. No one will argue with that. And then on this other track on the right, you have innovation and future ready and things that we're really passionate about and talking about now. The hard part is how do those tracks, how do those two worlds collide? And it's that space in the middle where innovation meets best practice that the beauty of what we want our kids and schools to be is found. And this is just a graphic from the book that I put together and that was put out lately. But if you look in the upper right quadrant where amplified learning is, when we think about the higher the level of innovation and the higher the level of best practice, we can really achieve some of this amplified learning that we're after. And I think in my final 30 seconds, I'm going to give you a concrete example, because I know principals really like examples. So we recently added kindergarten specials at our school, which basically means our kindergartners get to go to a specialist like Phy-Ed, music, art, et cetera, et cetera. And each school in our district, allocated 30 minutes a day for kindergartners, and we had some autonomy based on staffing and schedules to figure out what those specials would be. Well, it just turned out that our kiddos have technology twice a week. They have Phy-Ed, music, art as well. Instead of just keeping the status quo going and having two regular technology classes, one on Thursday, one on Friday, one of those a week is kinder coding. It's 100% coding. So when you think about that, every kid is going to graduate, quote unquote, graduate kindergarten at the end of the year with a firm understanding of how to talk to a computer, coding. And they're starting out with zero technology. This is free. They're programming their teacher using arrows, linear thinking, failing. It's beautiful to watch. Eventually they'll get to B-bots and Spheros and other things. But the point is we have applied innovation to a traditional best practice, and we're amplifying learning. So that's the example. So I get jacked up about this, but Tom, I know you do too. So I'm going to pass the mic back to you.
Well, Brad, thanks for sharing those examples. My biggest takeaway from what you were sharing there really relates to two things: modeling and creating that culture of it's okay to fail. And I think as building principals, it's easy, and having been a building principal myself for a number of years, it's easy to want to feel like we're always going to come across, because we always want to be competent. That's certainly important. But when you open yourself up and you make yourself vulnerable of, hey, we're going to fail forward, and as the leader, I'm going to make mistakes, and you know, that creates a culture where it's going to be okay for teachers to do so as well. And so, you know, for you creating that culture of innovation, your modeling through that is certainly going to be key there. And so kudos to the work that you're doing. Loving hearing that specific example about the kindergarten coding there at the end as well. So thank you for sharing that. I want to leave off, before we get to some discussion at the end, with some tools and resources. And Brad was just using the train track example. Let me help bring those together for you and what we're doing related to Future Ready Schools. First, everything I'm about to share is totally free. There is no sales pitch with any of this. It's been funded in a variety of different ways, but there is nothing for districts to buy. This is all completely for free. Let me hit a couple things that are supports for you as school leaders. First is our website, futureready.org. It's really our hub for where you're going to find a variety of things. Let me give some examples of what you'll see inside the actual hub in the website. You'll notice throughout the year, I'll just hit a couple of these things. When you go to different conferences, you'll notice conference connections and strands related to Future Ready. We hit a variety of our gears through here, and you'll see a variety of conferences. About 20 conferences nationwide are already using some of the gears and designing sessions to meet your needs in these different areas. Some of the other pieces, things like webinars and chats and schedules of activities that you see there, working together with so many of our different partners to create a hub or an umbrella for a one-size-fits-all tool for all of you. And when I say one-size-fits-all, kind of an area for all of you to go to be able to have these ongoing opportunities from webinars and chats from all of our different partners, free courses and those kinds of things to be able to support your work that's in there. We also have a Future Ready dashboard, and I want to share this here as well. As you're doing visioning and planning, this is built as a district level tool, but especially if you've got a large school, it's something that you could absolutely take a look at. The URL's down there at the bottom. But encourage district leaders to, where do you stand with all of this stuff? How are you making decisions for your visioning moving forward? Is it, you know, just a gut instinct? Is it the loudest person in the room? Or is it actually based on some data and based on some research? And the Future Ready dashboard is a dynamic planning tool, totally free, districts on their own data, to be able to support their visioning process moving forward, to be able to bring a leadership team together and help answer and chew on some really tough questions on where you stand, and really a dynamic feature to be able to do that. That helps districts set their vision for teaching and learning. And where are you going with all of this work and all this conversation? We include in that a 5-step process, and you can see there, to help district leadership teams break this down to make it manageable on setting that vision and setting that tone and getting stakeholder input and empowering teachers and so on and so forth to make this manageable and to help them through that process there. Just to give some quick examples of what comes out of that, district teams get a variety of scores in all different areas where they can really chew on and take a look at, where do we need to grow, where do we need to put our money next year. And you can see things like different levels of readiness at the different gear levels and also at the element levels. Those are kind of a deeper dive in each area. What also comes out of this tool is a free gap analysis for district leaders that point out all the different gaps in the responses based on best practice, based on research. But you'll also notice there's customized strategies there. We worked with over 40 practitioners leading the way nationwide and asked them the questions of, if this was a gap in your district, Mr. Superintendent or Principal or Tech Director, what would you do to solve it? And so they wrote a variety of strategies to support district leaders, and every report is completely customized with those. You can also use different reports at the different gear levels to get a variety of stakeholder input to really help vision and plan for where you're going with all of this. Also included in there are hundreds of resources totally free from all of our partners. Partners like NAESP and NASSP, or the Learning Accelerator, ISTE, or COSIN, AASA, and so on and so forth, in one spot, in one house, all for you, all tagged down to the gear level and even to the element level. And we encourage you to check those out, all totally free to support your transition moving forward. One other quick piece is we did recently launch Future Ready Librarians. Encourage you to check that out. Empower your librarians in many, many schools. Those are often go-to people that are leading PD, or they're starting a makerspace, they're starting something new and different. And so we launched that at ISTE, and that's been growing leaps and bounds as well. Encourage your librarians to check that out, all totally free there as well. With that, on behalf of Future Ready, I'm going to turn it back over to Deb for our last few minutes of discussion here. But on behalf of Future Ready, thanks for sharing all of that. And Brad and Jerry, thanks for your leadership at the building level. And overall, thanks all that you all do for kids. So Deb, I'm going to turn it back over to you for some questions.
Great, thank you. Thank all three of you, and you brought up so many important points today, and I have so many questions but so little time. So one of the things that I really noticed with you, Jared, is how you really enlisted your community and wrapping their arms around this work. And so could you give our participants today in this webinar some more insight on the importance of having that engagement with those key stakeholders, not only within your building, but I think more importantly outside? How did you go about doing that?
So some of the things that we did to really connect with the community were things like the school bus tours, right? And so we purposefully went to industry that were held in Bristol or in Warren or just outside of these two towns, and strategically went to them and asked about how are they hiring? Are they hiring people from the region? Are they hiring, Bristol Warren graduates from Mount Hope High School into their organizations? And then brought them into the fold of, okay, so this is how we're trying to prepare our students to be the next level of employee at, your industry, your business, your organization. So we're bringing them in on these school bus tours where they would go school to school to school and visit innovative classrooms. They would visit our STEM labs. They would visit, an IT class. They would visit a computer class to see how things are happening, and just trying to expose what happens here so that down the line they know that they're going to have well-equipped, confident employees coming out of our district. Some of the other things is we leveraged our PTOs. So they are a great resource of information. They're the ones that can tell you is the communication level up to par? Are parents understanding everything that's happening? Are they being given enough notice about events and things along those lines? But then at the same time, can they articulate the learning that's happening? So when their son or their daughter comes home and they're having those conversations over the dinner table, do mom and dad truly understand those things? And in most cases, they don't. It's so far removed from their school experience. So to bring them in and have them learn from our experiences and what their kids are going through on a day-to-day basis just validates the process. And then as things move forward and you might need to tap into a resource or a funding source, they're far more willing and able to say, yes, I get it. I know where they're going. I understand the vision of the district, and I support that. My kids had a phenomenal experience in Kickemuit Middle School, Mount Hope High School, and they were prepared, to move forward. So I will fund, I will support, and I will come in. It has been hugely impactful for our culture and our community to have parents and families and stakeholders and businesses in our buildings. We're such a almost like a closed off kind of field when it comes to have that community engagement. We need to bring those those organizations into the fold more so. One of the things that our families talk about in the beginning of the year is kids are in middle school now. I don't need to, I don't get to come into the school anymore and bring in cupcakes and brownies and, be a classroom support. No, but you can be a support in a different way. You can be a support by helping your child and being able to, give them the little push at home. You can be a support in a way of fostering, some, resources that will help support the school initiative. But like I said, we tapped into businesses, organizations, and then really leveraged our PTOs.
Wow, that sounds fantastic. And so I know, we've been talking for many, many years now about, preparing our students for the 21st century. And Brad, you really hit on something key that I want to pivot back on. You talked about personalized student learning, and you also talked about personalized professional learning. Talk to us a little bit more about how you go about aligning those two practices.
Right. I typically start answers with modeling, because if a principal is not doing what he or she is hoping kids will experience, the leadership is flawed. Okay, so once the modeling is in place, then we have to look at how the adults are learning in a school. So because the reality is how teachers experience their learning actually increases their capacity to facilitate similar learning for kids. So if they're learning about flipped and experiencing flipped PD, they're more inclined and have the capacity and awareness even to be able to give that to kids. Okay, same with choice in the classroom. It's just such a basic concept. So if we as school leaders are not pushing ourselves out of our comfort zone, doing different, empowering staff, I mean, if we're feeling like we have to lead every meeting in PD, that right there is problematic, because we wouldn't want to see that in a classroom. It shouldn't be the same student or the teacher leading everything. So it always goes back to leadership. And in a nutshell, that's how I see the journey of personalization really having traction.
And Deb, I would add from a Future Ready in there, one of the things that we often talk about in that area as well is, how are you leading faculty meetings? How are you running in-service days, and what does that look like? And are they a direct reflection, exactly as Brad said, for the type of learning that you're looking for in the classroom? And I would agree that that modeling is absolutely key.
Fantastic. So I know we're really out of time, but one of the questions that I was going to ask you, Tom, is where does a principal begin with this work? But you were very diligent in explaining the dashboard that's available for principals to do assessments of where they are and really doing some thinking about where they want to go. And so for our listeners, please know that NASP is very, very invested in partnering with Future Ready, and so you will be hearing more in the future about our partnership, because we really value this work and think it is so, so important. And I really want to go back again and thank Tom, Brad, and Jared for what they shared with us today. And more importantly, I want to again thank all the principals out there in the world who are making great things happen for students every day. And I know that this is National Principals Month, but you deserve to be thanked every day of every month. So again, thank you for joining us this afternoon, and we look forward to further collaboration. Thank you.